The Nord Stream pipeline. Who did it and why? Welcome to the show. Today we're going to be talking about the Nord Stream pipeline, which, as you all know, got blown up. So the question is, who did it and why did they do it? Before I share my initial thoughts, what were your initial thoughts when you heard about it?
Oh, I don't. It's so hard to know what to believe anymore with everything going on. I guess I immediately assumed that probably the Americans were involved.
Yeah.
Just because there's been such vocal opposition, and we stand the most to gain from the pipeline being blown up.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, my initial thought was, well, it wouldn't make any sense for Russia to do it because it's their pipeline.
Right.
Wouldn't make any sense for anyone in Europe to do it because that's their potential gas supply to get them through the winter. Wouldn't make any sense for America to do it because it could start World War III. And so the only person left is Spectre.
Oh, right.
Of course, everyone knows that criminal masterminds with aspirations of world domination are only in fiction.
Exactly.
Anyway, let's dig a bit deeper, eh? Why would... who did it? Russia is one possibility. Germany or another NATO state, another possibility. Ukraine would probably like to do it. Whether they had the means to do it is another question.
That would be my question, is do they even have the resources to be able to do something like that?
They don't have any sea access to the Baltic, so they couldn't really do it by themselves. They'd have to get some help from somebody. The conventional CNN view is that Russia did it.
Right.
So I tried to look into that a bit deeper to see if there was any possible reason why Russia might have done it. And everything that was in the reports, none of it really held water. It was kind of like, well, Russia did it to show people they're serious. But,
Yeah.
But, if they want to cut off the gas supply to Europe, all they have to do is turn off the valve. I mean, they own that end of the pipeline.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess the political grandstanding, or if Russia did it and yet they can blame somebody else for having done it. Does that gain them anything?
It's hard to see, personally. I mean, the one thing I did see that, could possibly make sense was if they just shut off the gas, then Gazprom has contracts with European nations to deliver gas, and they're in default on those contracts.
Right.
But if the pipeline is not operational, they can claim force majeure.
Right.
And so then, one place was saying they could be on the hook for $10 to $30 billion in penalties due to the contracts.
Right.
But it still doesn't make any sense to me because Russia wants a negotiated end to this war. They don't want it to keep going on. And the biggest leverage they have over Europe and Germany is, okay, if we end the war, we'll turn the gas back on.
Right. I think they most likely, to speak more broadly on the whole Ukrainian situation, was they thought that, okay, we'll go in, we'll put pressure on Ukraine. Ukraine will give us what we want. Crimea announced that, yes, Crimea is officially part of Russia, and Ukraine quits holding on to it. And so, like you said, they're forcing this quick end, and yet they're not getting that quick end.
Yeah. There was another scenario I saw on one source which said it could have been some, non-nation state which had some, managed to do it. I mean, the conventional kind of view is, you've got a remote operated submarine which goes down and places the charge. It's a pretty big explosion. It's 100 kilograms of TNT. Is
James Cameron. You heard it here first. It was James Cameron and his submersibles.
He could have done it.
Not true. He has the technology to do it, though.
Yeah, there are private parties that have the technology to do it now. And so it could have potentially been some terrorist organization, but no one's claimed credit, and there's no one who would seem to benefit from it.
Exactly. Where's the benefit lie? I think that's a question we have to ask. I don't know. Has anyone actually benefited from this?
Well, here's one way of looking at it. There's Germany's looking at a really tough winter, and
Right.
a lot of Europe is because no gas.
Because they've turned their nuclear plants off.
They have turned the well, they've
Well,
delayed.
they delayed it
They've
now.
changed their mind about that
Already,
now,
yeah.
but it's a little bit late.
Yeah.
I mean, they're really committed to Russian gas.
Right.
So who stands to benefit? Germany has a big problem, right? And the German population, reports I read, is that public opinion in Germany is shifting against the war.
Hmm.
I mean, there were some big demonstrations in September. There were 10,000 people protesting in different German cities saying, end the war, end the sanctions. And because they're looking at like mass unemployment because Germany's going to have to shut down their industry. That means that they'll have a choice between people freezing in their homes or shutting down industry. And, they're going to shut down the industry. And people are saying that these factories that are being shut down aren't going to reopen.
Hmm.
Rationing gas and rationing of electricity, it's going to be a tough winter. And so the German people are getting not very happy about it. And why are they trying to take down Russia through this war?
Are they actually supporting the war materially?
Germany, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure to what extent. I think they're providing weapons. I
Right.
don't remember to what extent compared to America, but they're certainly supporting 100%. And so the German government's facing political pressure to turn the gas back on, get Ukraine and Russia to negotiate.
But it's kind of too late now as far as Nord Stream goes.
That's right. Suddenly the German politicians say,
Right.
it's not our fault the
Exactly.
gas isn't running. It's those nasty Russian people who blew up their pipeline. It's blame them,
Right.
So there's a political maneuver for them.
But there's other pipelines that allow them to get gas from Russia, right?
There's pipelines that go through Ukraine.
Okay.
And I'm not sure where else. There are other pipelines. It's not their only source of gas, but Russia's been cutting back the gas on the other ones too, I think. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline actually hadn't been turned on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was about to be turned on, and then I think Russia invaded, or just before Russia invaded, America put a lot of pressure on, and Germany wouldn't approve the opening of the pipeline. So
Right.
it's there, and it was full of gas, but had never been approved, so it wasn't running. Each of those pipelines can take 50 million cubic meters of gas per year.
That's a lot of gas.
It's a lot of gas, yeah. They're 48-inch pipelines, and they're very high pressure. Nord Stream 1, both of them have been damaged. Nord Stream 2, only one of them is damaged. So they've still got, So
there's two Nord Stream. They're in the same location?
more or less the same location. Yeah, they run parallel. There's a little bit of divergence near where the explosions happened.
Okay.
So both pipes of Nord Stream 1 are out. Nord Stream 2, one of the pipes is still intact and can still transport gas, apparently.
Okay.
The pipelines could be repaired, from what I've seen.
Yeah.
The initial report, the CNN level reporting was that they can never be repaired because once the seawater gets in, the pipelines are no good. But apparently that's not entirely true. And what I saw a report on a kind of a maritime industry trade journal or something, which I think is more reliable than CNN for things like this. And they were saying that the technology is there and the plans are there to repair pipelines in situations not like this necessarily, but a ship drops an anchor on a pipeline or something, and
Right.
they can repair it. And there's different ways they can do it, and it should take a few months. And the plans are all in place, and the ships to do it are all in place.
Right.
But the question is, would Denmark would have to approve it because where the pipelines were damaged was in Denmark territorial waters.
They would have to approve it, even though they've already approved the pipeline?
Yeah, well, this is what I was reading. It's because it's in Denmark's territorial waters, so they have to approve, moving the ships in there to do the repair.
Oh, okay.
So
Denmark did it. Dun, dun, dun.
Would the question is would NATO let them repair it? And then I haven't seen a reliable report, but I have had reports that Russia said they're going to repair the pipeline.
Really? So
Yeah.
they want it. They want the pipeline repaired.
That's what that would seem to indicate. Why blow it up if you're just going to repair it?
Right.
But then,
Well-
if NATO says, no, sorry, you can't repair it, then that looks more like they're the guilty party, doesn't it?
I think they're all guilty. It's hard to know. It's so hard to know. I mean, yeah, Russia could easily have blown it up and then say, yeah, we'll fix it for you. Yeah. Let's get back into business because it served its purpose for whatever, and now we'll get back to actually making money from the pipeline.
Yeah. No, maybe. I mean, it cost a lot of money to repair it. I don't know.
Yeah. So who did it?
Who did it? Well, America has another motive. Well, one looking at why America might have wanted to be done, or why America might have been happy it was done. Well, there's a couple of things actually, a couple of additional things about America's interests in this matter, shall we say. One is this quote from Joe Biden on the Nord Stream pipeline. Have you seen that?
No, I don't think so.
I think we'll play it.
Let me answer the first question first. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly? Since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
So that quote resurfaced recently.
Yeah.
Joe Biden said we'll take it out. It got taken out, and well, you could put two and two together maybe.
Yeah, right.
But kind of why would he say that? I mean, was he in some classified briefing and forgot that he wasn't supposed to talk about this, or? It's kind of a classic Joe Biden thing. Even for many years, he'll say things he's not meant to.
Right.
Anyway,
another one I heard for the reason why America was opposed to Nord Stream in the first place, besides the geopolitical, was that we were selling gas to Europe at a rate higher than what Russia was. So American interests stood to make more money.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and that's what's happening. To replace Russian gas, they're exporting liquefied natural gas from America to Europe. So we're making money off the Nord Stream pipeline being down or not, not being able to be put back in service.
Right.
It's not a great deal for the Europeans because liquefied natural gas is much more expensive than gas through a pipeline. The infrastructure to
compress it,
liquefy it, put it on a ship, sail across the ocean, way more than a pipeline. So why would America want to sell gas to Russia? Well, a couple of reasons. One is, it's good for our economy, export income. Number two is raises the price of domestic gas here because we're shipping our gas to Europe.
Right.
So that advances the green agenda of making fossil fuels expensive to try to force people to go to alternatives.
No need for a carbon tax.
No need for a carbon tax. Yep. There was an interesting quote from Blinken too, which we'll play.
Ultimately, this is also a tremendous opportunity. It's a tremendous opportunity to once and for all remove the dependence on Russian energy, and thus to take away from Vladimir Putin the weaponization of energy as a means of advancing his imperial designs.
So
I think Blinken's the only one I've seen actually go on television and be happy that the pipeline was blown up.
Right. Yeah. Well, didn't Trump spoke to the UN, right? And I saw that clip where he was saying, you guys are getting in bed with Russia with this Russian oil, Russian gas.
Yeah.
And you're not going to enjoy your bedfellow.
Yeah. I mean, Trump was trying to, get Nord Stream 2 cancelled.
Right.
And, because it would give Russia political leverage over Europe, which he thought wasn't a good idea. I mean, there's that clip of him at the UN and the German delegation is sniggering when he's saying it.
These Americans are so funny.
Yes. So, so there was the political thing. And then the interesting thing is, when Joe Biden got to be president, he approved the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, gave the go-ahead.
Right.
And then yanked it back again right before Russia invaded. So,
yeah, some mixed signals right there.
Mixed signals, yeah. The German policy on the war in Ukraine seems to be, let's try to use this war to weaken Russia on a geopolitical scale. I mean, Hillary Clinton came out and said that one time. She talked about how Ukraine was going to be Vladimir Putin's Afghanistan.
Oh, okay.
You know, Afghanistan was one of the things that led to the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Right. To try and bait them into this endless war of.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's reports going back many years of some American senators in Ukraine with the guys who are fighting Russia in the Donbass. Your fight is our fight, and we're fighting. We're giving you 100% support, and we're fighting Russia here, so we don't have to fight Russia in other places.
Right.
There was also reports, they had intelligence reports or analyses saying that if there was an insurgency fighting a Russian occupation, it would last 10 to 20 years and Russia would eventually lose, but it would tremendously weaken Russia in the meantime.
Mm.
Another interesting thing about it, which kind of speaks to me that it wasn't Russia, was that the pipeline was blown up the day after the Baltic pipe, natural gas pipeline, was open. And that's a pipeline that goes from North Sea gas fields through Denmark and goes into Poland.
Okay.
It's 10 million cubic meters per annum versus 55 in the Nord Stream.
Okay. And Poland operates it.
Poland operates it. So it can't replace Nord Stream. But the fact that it was the day after that one came online. So what that tells me, it's going to have less of an impact on gas supplies because there's already an alternative. So it was done at a time where it would have a minimal impact on gas prices in Europe. So it's not going to hurt Germany. If Russia was going to do it, they'd want to do it at a time when it would have a bigger impact on gas prices, presumably.
Interesting. So Poland did it. Most likely.
Poland did it, yeah, because they've got their own pipeline.
Well,
now.
they're not best friends with Russia, so.
Are they friends with Germany?
No.
We've got our pipe. Don't care about you guys. You don't have any gas left. That's okay. Or you can ship all your factories to Poland.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there you go. That's a good point. Yeah, if they're not friends with Russia or Germany, they're just going to be happily pumping their own gas.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, there was an article in, I think, Foreign Policy magazine. This article was saying in April of this year, shortly after Russia invaded, there were secret negotiations going on between Ukraine and Russia.
Right, I heard about that.
And they reached a deal, which was basically that Russia would withdraw to February 24th positions. In other words, they'd be in Crimea and Donbass.
Mm.
And Ukraine would agree not to join NATO. But then Boris Johnson came to Kiev, met with Zelensky and said, NATO allies won't support this. You have to keep fighting.
And why? Yeah, why? What's the motive there?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? What the US said the goal was to get Russia out of Ukraine and restore the status quo. But that's obviously not the goal. And, it's like what I said about what Clinton said and what other people have said. They're looking at this as an opportunity to weaken Russia,
Right.
To take Russia down. And, from the point of view of the, World Economic Forum and their globalization agenda, Russia isn't on board with that.
No, definitely not.
So they're pushing back against it. So, and they're pushing back against a lot of the globalization thing under, Western, basically the WEF, the World Economic Forum agenda, the Great Reset. They're kind of pushing back against it. So, and that's very much integrated into the US government, I think, at this point.
It's almost like two cabals. Like you have the Russian elites, oligarchs who want their power, and then you have the Western elites and their cabal of bankers and power.
The Davos sect.
Yeah, the Davos sect. Yeah, and they're upset with each other.
Yeah.
Of course, one has significantly more weapons and money, but
yeah. In one sense, I don't think this is hurting the Russian economy nearly as much as people predicted it would. If you look at the exchange rate of the ruble to the dollar, initially it went way down.
Right. It was like 130 or something crazy.
Yeah, it went from like 90 or something, was it before? And,
it was like 70 to 80.
Yeah, and then but then a few weeks later, it's actually up higher than it was before.
Yeah.
Because Russia's making way more money on gas and oil exports than they were before. So It's hard to tell how much it's going to hurt their economy. I mean, there's still a lot of the world is still trading with them. The BRICS countries are still trading with them. You know, Brazil, China, India. They don't have any sanctions. So most of the world actually doesn't have sanctions on Russia. If they can get by without Europe and America, you know, they can. We get everything from China.
Yeah, so can they.
So can they, you know. I don't know. There's stuff they can't get from China probably. But
Well, even, I mean, we have massive supply chain issues. So even like I've heard things like from my wife's family that there are
in Russia,
in Russia, that there's limited food on the shelves and things like that. That there were there are supply issues there, but you know, there's also huge supply chain issues in America right now, and around the world. So it's hard to say that is directly because of the situation with Ukraine.
well, they probably got to find alternative sources for, you know, where they used to get stuff from,
Right.
and it takes a while to, you know, to do that. It takes time to, you know, get the contracts and figure out the transportation and all that kind of stuff from the other side of the world. You know, you're putting it from the east rather than the west.
Mm-hmm. And where to sell their natural gas if they can't sell it to Europe?
Yeah, I don't know. Do they have pipelines to Asia? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if they do, then that would be another.
They're selling oil to China, I think, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
I was reading, you know, the one of the things that's happening is they're selling oil at a discount to countries they're trading with, and those countries are reselling it to European nations at full price.
Arbitrage there.
Yeah, arbitrage. Yeah. I mean, sanctions on oil, you know, really very hard to make stick because it's a
right.
You know.
There's no barcode on the oil that they sell. You know?
Yeah, where does it all come from? Well, you know, yeah, you can't tell, and it's a global market, and there's a lot of shipping for oil around the world. Anyway, so
we have no idea who did it.
We still don't know who did it. There's clear who benefits from it,
right.
You know, and it doesn't seem like it's Russia. It's hard to pin it on Russia from a motive point of view. They could have done it, you know.
They'd be leaving a lot of money on the table if they do.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I mean, I also look at the implications of it. It's kind of to me like crossed a line in, you know, where undeclared wars. What's fair game as a target in an undeclared war?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
the
you know,
Lusitania.
Yeah, that kind of thing, you know, and it seems like it's a clear escalation in the economic war. I mean, unless Russia did it to itself, you know, but if anyone else other than Russia did it, then it's a clear escalation of the war. And then what's Russia going to do in retaliation? And then, you know, and I think we've seen that already to some extent. There was sabotage on the German railway system.
Okay.
Someone cut some signaling cable, took down the entire railway system in northern Germany for several hours.
Wow.
So, you know, what other infrastructure is vulnerable? One thing that people have been talking about for a while is if undersea pipelines are vulnerable, all of the undersea internet fiber optic cables.
Definitely.
And, you know, there's no way you can guard something like that.
Not for 2,000 miles or something.
Yeah, across the Pacific Ocean or across the Atlantic Ocean. And if too many of those get cut, then, you know, the internet starts to fall apart and global commerce starts to grind to a halt.
Starlink.
Yeah.
It will be our only future.
You know, what's the next target? You know, are they going to start taking internet cables? And, you know, is it going to escalate?
Right.
There was another escalation in a sense, taking out the bridge, you know, the bridge from Russia to Crimea.
Oh, to Crimea, yeah.
What's that, the Kerch Bridge, is it?
I don't know the name.
I think that's what it is. It's the longest bridge in Europe.
It's the bridge that says, and this is part of Russia. How? That's what that tells me. That's always my question. What, Crimea is part of Russia? How?
Historically, it was.
Historically, yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting. That's a whole other show.
Yeah, right.
About maybe we'll do a show on that.
But that bridge was taken out, right? Yeah.
It was. I mean, they're saying it was a truck bomb.
Oh, wow.
There's some video floating around of a missile going in, but I think it might be faked.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Never believe anything on the internet now.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell. And Russia's saying they've arrested 7 people who were part of the plot. They claim they found the driver's license of the guy who was driving the truck.
That survived. Okay.
Even though the bridge didn't.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but it only took out one side of the bridge.
Lane. Okay.
Yeah, it's like 2 lanes each direction. Took out one lanes in one direction. So I don't think it's going to have that much of an impact on what traffic goes across the bridge. So I'll just have to have 1 lane each way instead of 2 lanes. But
I don't think I wouldn't drive it until they'd been like, yes, it's clear it is good bridge. Because, I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, that half was blown up and this half is fine. I don't know. I wouldn't be driving across that bridge.
Yeah, you might end up behind a truck with full of explosives.
Well, yeah, the other truck full of explosives, exactly.
Yeah. And supposedly, interesting this, the truck that was driving from the Russia end, rather than the Crimea end. So I don't know. Supposedly there was some plot where they got the explosives and out and into Russia and put them on a truck and sent them in.
But why? Why not go the other direction?
What?
Why not just blow up the other side?
Well, yeah, that's the next target probably. I don't know. I mean, Zelensky's really happy about the bridge being blown up.
Right.
Did you see the video they posted? It was blown up on Putin's birthday. And it was like a happy birthday video. You know the Marilyn Monroe singing happy birthday to
JFK.
To JFK. They had that on half the screen, and the other half of the screen was the bridge blowing up.
Right. These funny guys.
They haven't claimed credit for it, but they're certainly happy it happened.
Yeah. Did you see that General Petraeus talking about the war? Because Putin was talking about escalating to nuclear war. Of course, he keeps grandstanding about nuclear war. But that Petraeus said something to the effect of, we could destroy their entire Black Sea fleet in a single day. And I was like, wow, that's not an escalation. I don't know. It's just the problem with escalation is the other side can then escalate. It always gives permission for further escalation.
Yeah. Well, that's the classical scenario of how you end up in World War III.
Right.
It's escalation. I mean, we're in the not quite so early stages of that now.
Right.
US takes out the pipeline. Russia takes out a pipeline in America.
Right.
We say this is outrageous. You can't do that, and we, take out 3 pipelines, and then Russia, and then someone calculates that the only recourse they have now is to go nuclear.
Right.
And then they do a tactical nuke, and we do a strategic nuke, and you're into World War III.
Right.
And the people who are running things in Washington just don't seem to be concerned about that scenario, which I think is a real concern.
Do you think that's true? Do you think they really don't? Do they not think that it's a likely outcome?
Well, if they do think it's a likely outcome, then they're
crazy.
They're really crazy.
Yeah. Well, or maybe they're looking for 500 million.
What?
To reduce population to 500 million.
Yeah, well, that would do it. They've got their bunkers, that they can go
right.
to. But, don't they have a favourite restaurant, that they're going to miss if there's a nuclear war?
I'll tell you.
Thai
restaurant in Livingston, Montana. That's the winner.
Yeah. But, no one's, there's a few people. Tulsi Gabbard is, she's resigned from the Democratic Party because they're pushing for war. And
Right.
And she's saying it's not a good idea to push for war, in this situation, to escalate the war.
Well, and that's what people talk about. Well, Ukraine should have accepted the
Minsk agreements.
The agreements and say, okay, fine, Crimea, yes, you're part of Russia. Donbass, okay, fine, you're part of Russia. And
well, the Minsk agreements wasn't even that. The Minsk agreements was that they had a degree of autonomy while remaining part of Ukraine.
So, but my question is, it's almost you're giving permission for the tyrant to do it again the next time. So if you don't hold the line, I understand the point of maybe it was a better idea than losing 10,000 more Ukrainian lives and continuing this and potentially going to World War III. But why do you constantly say, okay, yeah, sure, okay, that's a good agreement, Russia, for having invaded another sovereign nation. Where does that line get drawn where we say, no, you're not allowed to invade countries, period?
Yeah. Well, that's definitely it's definitely a difficult question.
Well, the bank robber comes in, he steals
Yeah.
$10,000, and then and they say, okay, I'll give you back 90% of that money if you don't chase me.
Mm-hmm.
You just leave me alone. Here's $1,000, or here's $9,000. I keep $1,000, and we'll just call it quits. Do we do that? I don't mean.
It's a tough moral position because it's a little bit different in that your bank robber doesn't have nuclear weapons.
Yeah, right. Well,
I think you've got to look at the history too. I think you can say, okay, morally it wasn't right, but then you can say there's a lot of things that morally the West did that weren't right. That were, I mean, if you look at the history of it, I think it's really legitimate to say they were trying to antagonize Russia.
okay, yeah, yes, antagonize, yes, but in joining NATO, yes, okay, but how does that give him permission to attack Ukraine? To say you are going to join NATO, and then you're going to put your weapons on my doorstep. Newsflash: our weapons can already hit you. There's functionally no difference in our ability to destroy Russia before and after. It doesn't have to be a land war.
Yeah, well, but then Ukraine joins NATO. Is it going to use that to actually move militarily against Moscow?
But what we don't need. That's what I'm saying. There's no. I don't know. I'm not a military planner, but we don't need Ukraine in order to threaten Russia.
Yeah,
we can put
But
we
does
can
make
move our little nuclear sub right up into the Baltic and say, hey, by the way, we're 50 miles away from your major cities.
yeah. It's a good point. You don't want to be giving into, bullying and tyrants and so on. But on the other hand, when the Berlin Wall fell, when the Soviet Union broke up, the US made a commitment to Russia,
Right.
that these nations wouldn't join NATO.
Right.
And that commitment was violated.
And
So-
without joining NATO,
What?
the troops are already in Ukraine.
Yeah. Training and so on. And they were, America was supporting the war against Russia inside Ukraine. Putin is claiming that Ukraine was actually planning to invade Russia. That was my reaction. I didn't.
Well, it's like a tiny little nation with a tiny army.
Yeah,
even
why
backed
would-
by the U.S. What kind of
Why would they invade Russia?
what kind
It
of an
didn't make any
invasion would that
sense.
happen?
Yeah.
My wife's family has a summer residence in southern Russia, and it's only 130 kilometers from Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're definitely they're seeing more planes flying over, more military presence these days. So they're getting quite concerned because I think Ukraine did fire some kind of mortars or something into Russia proper. Well,
the bridge.
the bridges. But I thought there was an actual.
I think there were there were attacks actually inside Russian territory.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess they could mount some kind of an offense, but and the problem is all of this ends in the people being hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean we're fighting to the last Ukrainian.
Exactly. Yeah.
If the country is destroyed, it's worth it in order to teach Russia a lesson.
Right. And the
And-
death of an entire generation of Russian youth.
Ukrainian youth.
Well, no, I mean Russians as
Yeah.
well, because how many thousands of Russians
Yeah.
are dying in this effort, and you see the video of young Russian men trying to avoid this draft that they've called up,
Yeah.
trying to
Leaving the country. I think the argument maybe for the counter argument to what you were saying about why do we let the bully get away with it is let the Ukrainians work it out with Russia. Yeah,
There's only one end to that, and that is Russia wins.
well, no, I mean they had a negotiated agreement in March or April,
Right.
which was for Russian troops to withdraw to February 24th and Ukraine not to join NATO.
Right.
So why didn't we let them sign
So
that agreement?
if Ukraine's okay with that, why aren't we?
Yeah. I mean they're living next door to Russia. You know, they've got to have they've got an ongoing relationship with Russia. They've got a long border. Historically people are, a lot of Russians live in Ukraine and so on. So, I mean, it's to their advantage in every way to have good relations with Russia. I mean, economically, for trade and so on, in every way. And not that they need to be, Russian vassal states. They should be able to choose their own destiny. But if they want to, settle this war on those terms that are agreeable to them, why didn't we let them do it?
Yeah, for sure.
We're willing to sacrifice Ukraine in order to, have our goal of taking Russia down.
Right.
America is and NATO is.
Which I think is
I
definitely true. You can't even argue that the U.S. and NATO want a weakened Russia. But,
Yeah. So that's not principled either.
Yeah.
It's a mess. It's a mess. No, it's hard to see a good outcome at this point.
No,
Yeah.
with two nuclear-backed powers, basically. Well, one's fighting a proxy war.
Yeah, I mean, what I would be doing is, let's get back to the negotiating table, and rather than telling Zelensky he can't make a deal, he's got to keep fighting. Let's let him make a deal with Russia, and what's best for his country. I mean, what's best for his country is not, a war that just devastates everything, destroys the cities and kills, a bunch of people, and like a third of the population of Ukraine has left the country. How does that help?
Yeah.
And the longer it goes on, the less likely it is they want to come back. So,
I think Elon Musk didn't he tweet something like that? Like maybe Ukraine should follow those concessions, and then the Ukrainian defense minister said something like, "No thanks, pal." Yeah, it was much more explicit than that. But
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, he knows where his salary is coming from at this point from America and NATO, isn't it?
yeah.
They're calling the shots, and Zelensky doesn't have a lot of choice.
I mean, I guess he could make the agreement. No, could he not?
Not if NATO won't sign off on it.
But why not?
Well, then NATO withdraws all their support, military support, and he's in a very weak position then.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think so. I think he could, if he could sign an agreement with Russia, say, hey, that previous agreement, no, I was wrong. Let's do that.
But if NATO withdraws their support, economic and military, then Ukraine becomes dependent on Russia.
Right.
I mean, because their economy is basically destroyed at this point, as far as I can see. So how do they rebuild? They're going to need a lot of economic aid from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's either Russia or it's the EU
Or China.
or China. So we can be very principled about saying Russia's a bad thing, but done some very unprincipled things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So anyway,
So who did it?
who did it? We still don't know.
I have no idea.
We still don't know, and we may never know. Maybe it'll come out. It'd be good if it did. I mean, because I think if it comes out, then if it's America did it, some people need to get fired. Depending on how the chain of command it went for the decision.
Right.
But if whoever did it gets away with it, then you're going to see more of these things happening.
Yeah.
Like we talked about with the undersea infrastructure or internet or whatever, So I'd like to see it exposed, even if it is America, because I'd like to see us. Let's not get into
Leave that off the table.
destroying all the civilian infrastructure that runs the modern economy.
Right.
I don't see a good outcome of that with those kind of escalating things. So I think that's about all we can do for now, as far as drawing conclusions. And so I guess we will see you again next episode of SummitCast, and we'll keep our eye out for more news about Nord Stream and who did it.